Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Woo Curious podcast. Your map to the mystical, your key to the sacred, and your guide back home to yourself. I'm Eileen, a writer, a spiritual coach, energy healer, and slow living witch. This podcast is your invitation to explore a world where the mundane and the sacred intertwine. It's a haven for those ready to take the first steps into the realms of magic and mystery, providing a safe space for you to embark on your own enchanted journey towards healing and self-discovery. Here, I'll unveil the whispers of the mystical, the rituals often hidden in plain sight, and I'll engage in sacred conversation intended to stir your soul and lead you back into your power. I'm all about demystifying woo and witchcraft. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or simply woo curious, I'm so delighted you've decided to join me on this journey. Let's make magic. Hello, Woo Crew, and welcome back to another episode of the Woo Curious podcast. I am your host, Eileen, and I am here today with Kirsten Karchmer. Kirsten is a health and tech pioneer who's spent her career helping women improve their health and fertility outcomes. I'm really excited to get to know a little bit more about everything that you do, what you've built, what you offer, and your story. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Kirsten. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here because I really like to sit at the intersection of science and woo. And there's a great crossover. And that's, I think, the piece that so often we either think it's either science or woo, but actually there's a lot in between that we can explore.
Yeah, I love playing there as well. I think we're going to have a lot of similarities, perhaps in our backgrounds and educational pieces. As I mentioned before we started to record, I always like to start with this question around your own connection with either spirituality or, if we want to call it, the woo, how that's showed up in your life and how it informs the work that you do today.
It's been I always do things in circles. I love a circle for some reason, water and circles. But when I was growing up, I went to Catholic school and really got disciplined a lot by the nuns because I was probably the naughtiest kid in all of St. Monica's, but loved Catholicism. I loved the ritual. I loved the fact that this idea that somebody was looking out for you and that you had all these saints that you could pray to, even though most of them had leprosy. That was kind of scary. And I loved this because I was very naughty. I was a baby of 5 children in an Irish, Italian Catholic family. I used to beg my mom to go to confession. I would beg her, and she was like, honey, you are the only child in the universe that begs to go to confession. I'm like, I got a lot to talk about with Father Michael. And it was just, this absolution every single time that you went to confession, just you could just start over and then be naughty again. And then, basically went to college and studied philosophy. And then I'm like, religion is nothing, became it just straight nothing, atheist, nothing is happening. You're either alive or you're dead. But as an acupuncturist, it is very hard to live in a world where there's no spirit or energy. It's palpable. Even when I put the needle in, I can feel it on the end of the needle, right? That spark that makes you who you were. So through the course of, becoming an acupuncturist, I studied tons of Qigong and Tai Chi and meditation and Buddhism and spirituality. And where that has brought me today is this idea that, we're all God, that we're all that spark showing up in different forms. And of course, this isn't the truth, right? This is just where I'm at today. It could change tomorrow. And that's a really beautiful thing. If we are all the same spark, that means that even the people that you hate the most are parts of you as well. And it makes trying to find compassion for those people so much easier because that must be some shadow part of myself that is showing me something. Is that true? Who cares? I love, I've done a lot of work with Joe Dispenza, and Joe always says, who cares? Who cares? What about that? And he's like, who cares? Doesn't matter. It's all made up. If it's all made up, make up a story that you can be excited about, which I appreciate. So that's kind of the high level. Now I'm extremely, because I'm on a mission to try to democratize access to women's health and fertility. I'm always looking for the things what are the hacks? What are the things that we can harness and teach women and people with periods so that we can deliver optimal health to people for almost free? And the mind and the spirit are pretty fast gateways to transformation of both your health and your mindset and your experience with both. So if we can harness even placebo and mind work and breath work, they can be powerful accelerants that don't make us have to charge any more money.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the idea of placebo itself is almost silly to me because of it does a thing. Like it works. It's not nothing when we see a measurable effect from placebo. That kind of, I don't know, that always struck me. I was a midwife prior to embarking on
Mm.
this journey, and when I started midwifery, I was an atheist for sure, still very much firmly in that camp, and I used homeopathics all the time because I knew that even if nothing on an energetic level in the actual sugar pill was happening, that my giving that pill to somebody in labor was going to have an impact because of the connection between us. And so it's almost this untapped resource that we have, the power, and again, the coming back into that power of the mind and what used to be considered so woo that we now have so much science catching up to, being like, oh no, this mindset stuff, it's not like a nice to have or an addition on top. It should be part of how we create change and health, and on a more spiritual or emotional level as well in our lives.
I agree so much. And it's interesting, we did a pilot at Conceivable. We were able to increase the likelihood of people's natural likelihood of getting pregnant by between 150 to 260% in 4 months with no human interaction for $15 a month. And our investors came back and they're like, what got them pregnant? They're like, what in the hell? What's the secret sauce, right? And they're like, was it?
Yeah.
And because the care team can deliver nutrition, supplement recommendations, therapy, all these different things, they're like, what was the
Mm-hmm.
thing? And I would have ranked, like, what I thought was most important would be supplements first. And because we were using personalized
Mm.
Chinese herbs as part of that too, or food would have been the most important. But what I kept telling them is like the secret sauce is the ability to look at all of them instead of one of them. Instead of just looking at low
Mm-hmm.
progesterone or scanty lining, it's looking at the synthesis of all of the symptoms as a system and then treating the
Mm-hmm.
system versus the symptom. And
Mm-hmm.
what that meant was if someone is really stressed, instead of them even giving them rhodiola or ashwagandha, which we might do in addition, but also figuring out why is she so stressed and helping
Yeah.
her to build a relationship with that experience or that thought or that pattern. And that's where the real work starts happening. Otherwise it's still another band-aid, even if it's natural.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I think, when it comes to placebo, a real people I know who are listening are like, placebo, does it really work? Placebo often outperforms the medicine.
Yep.
It's culturally significant. Different countries, placebos will have different kinds that will work better or worse. So in France,
Mm.
the placebos that work the best are very small and beautifully colored, or a suppository. For some reason, you
Interesting.
give somebody, a French person, a suppository. This is real data. Versus
Yep.
in Germany, they need a big pill that's an ugly color that smells bad. So the French are
Huh.
like, oh, this doctor made something so beautiful and elegant. It must be so powerful. And the Germans like, it needs to suck in order for it to work for me, right? It's how
Right.
powerful our conditioning is about what is true and what is possible. And they did this enormous study on placebo. I think it was through the NIH on pain. And what they did is, I
Mm-hmm.
think it was at Stanford, maybe not Stanford, who cares? They had people and I don't know how they got this through IRB, but they had people and they said, you're gonna sit in front of a computer, we're gonna connect you to this little machine that's gonna shock you. This is the
Oh
IRB
yeah.
part. And we're gonna show you a red light or a green light. And 20 or 30 seconds after we show you the light, you're gonna get a shock. If you get a green light, there'll
Mm-hmm.
be no shock or it'll be very, very light. If you get a red, you're gonna get a very bad shock. Bad enough where they recoiled. So it didn't like kill
Mm-hmm.
them, but like enough where they're like, oh shit. And
Yeah.
at the end, so they got 3 sections, like 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. I'm not retelling the exact clinical
It's all
presentation,
good.
but you get what I mean.
The
And
gist of it.
then they interviewed them afterwards and they're like, what was that like? And they're like, wow, the first version, the first 5 minutes was really bad. Like the reds were really intense or whatever. And then they said the second five, it was weird. I think they weren't giving me the full red. That's what they said. Things like it wasn't as bad. And the third significant percentage of people said, I think I got all green. But each session was 50-50 of the exact same delivery. And what the researchers were
Mm.
able to conclude from that was that in the 30 seconds, within 15 minutes, the 30 seconds, when the brain, after the first 5 minutes, the brain was like, red means something really bad is coming, dump a ton of dopamine. And that's why
Mm.
they had this sort of like improved resilience to the pain because the person had basically
Mm-hmm.
already adapted to the red light. And when I read that
Mm-hmm.
study, I was like, we need to tap into this. This is how you
Yeah.
make healthcare free, right? We tap into how do we talk to the brain in the way that the brain hears it in the exact way that we want and does it. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you're sitting here going, oh yeah, this is like so like, it doesn't matter. I always do this when I'm doing a talk. I say, I want you to do this meditation, everybody, every day. And I stole this. I did not invent this. And what I want you to do is I want you to sit down and light a candle. And I want you to get really quiet. And I want you to watch the candle, breathe in through your nose, out through your nose, in through your nose. And when you're breathing in, I want you to look at that flame and I want you to imagine it's bone cancer. I want you to take a deep breath of bone cancer in through your nose. Suck that bone cancer in, and when you breathe out, it spreads through your bone like wildfire. So everybody take a breath in of bone cancer, and people like freak out. They're like, stop. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm like, why is
Yeah.
that? Like stand up if you are not going to do that, and everybody stands up. And then it's like, why don't you want to do that? And like, I don't know. And I was like, well, what's the matter? Are you afraid that's going to give you cancer? And they're like, probably. And I was like, what if I told you to do the same thing, but when you looked at the candle, you breathed in purification or money or health or freedom or whatever? Could that do anything? And they're like, no. We can't believe, we
Yeah.
can really believe. Like, I could even see your face, Eileen. Like, when I was telling you, you're like, I don't know, I can't even listen to this breathing into the bone cancer.
No, no, there's no way you'd get me to do that.
Right?
Now, on the flip
Especially,
side, I very much believe I can breathe in health or success or wealth and call
yes.
that into me. It makes a lot of sense. I recognize that pattern. I think there's like, I almost wonder too if part of that, it's obviously cultural conditioning to some extent. And if my listeners will know, I rant on and on about Cartesian duality and this like separation of mind and body and our separation from the energetics of the more than human world. But there is this sense of also our brains are so wired to avoid danger that superstitions come up like, oh, well, I mean, it might, breathing in that candle probably won't give me bone cancer, but it could. And so I'm going to really avoid it. That's a stronger trigger, I think, for us than like breathing in something good. It's a lot harder for us to believe, to really drop into that belief that we can attract good things to us as easily as so many of us feel we can attract bad feelings or bad luck to us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Yeah.
do wonder. Like, I grew up in a house where my father was even he was not woo at all, but he really was into Zig Ziglar and the power of positive thinking. So he was kind of woo in his own way, but is like
He just
everything
didn't know
else,
it.
like white Republican guy. And he always said, he always would tell me, just no matter, I was an athlete, and he always say, you're a river going down a mountain, ain't nothing can stop you. You get stuck, you just find a way around it. That's what I see you do every time. That's what you're
Mm-hmm.
made of. And he told me that so much that it's like, it served me so well that literally anytime I do get up against something so hard and I feel the pressure to fix it, I'm like, oh, that's just my river trying to get around it. And it gives
Mm-hmm.
your brain something to hold on to that allows those statements to be more true for you as opposed to be just complete confabulation.
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting how, we know that our brains don't differentiate from a memory and an imagined possibility. And so if we think about, okay, we can get into that feeling state of a memory, we actually physiologically can reproduce or replicate the way that we felt in those moments. And we can do the same thing for an imagined possible future, which is all anxiety is. And that's all that this worry and this fear and anxiety that so many of us walk around with is. It's a story about the future that we're choosing to believe is possible. And so that kind of flip, and it takes practice because we're really good at worrying, again, that like survival mechanism brain, but practicing writing different stories for the future and dropping into how good that would feel allows you to find more of that feeling in your surroundings already.
I love that. Yeah. Do you, speaking of woo, do you know who Bashar is?
I am familiar with the name, but I don't think I know them
There's a
well.
guy on social media, Daryl Anka, and he is a older bald guy with like glasses, and he basically is saying that he channels this extraterrestrial named Bashar and does
Okay.
teachings. And what's
Mm-hmm.
interesting is that I saw a neuroscientist from somewhere like Stanford, I don't know where she was from, and she said, "Yeah, I came across this guy who was saying he was channeling, and I was so curious about like, what's happening in his brain." So she reached out to him and they did a bunch of MRIs while he was not channeling and when she was channeling. And she was like, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but his brain was completely different. I don't have an explanation. It was not the same brain, like the
Mm-hmm.
difference from the channeling. But what I like what he says, he's like, it doesn't really matter to me whether you think that I'm channeling or not channeling. If something that I say is useful to you, then that's really a wonderful thing. And so that's what I tell
Right.
people. But to your point of the story, he always says your preferential state or your less than preferential state. And he was like, whenever you're in a less than preferential state, meaning stress, anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
worry, upset, whatever, he said, in order to be able to have that feeling, you must believe things that make that
Mm-hmm.
true. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
fastest ways to untangle it is to say like, "Oh, I'm worried I'm never going to get my company off the ground or whatever." And then he's like, "Feel the feeling first and then say like, what must I believe? What tiny part of this must I believe?" And the concrete ones are the things like that I really don't have what it takes to pull this off, my own anxieties, or that
Mm-hmm.
AI is going to just eat us up and they're not going to need us anymore, like all these things. But then there's a lower one about worthiness, like, do I really believe that the universe is against me? Do I not believe that I'm doing what I think to be God's work here, and that probably every being in the cosmos is rooting for us to try to help people to have babies? Like, does that really make sense? No. And suddenly that feeling, instead of squishing it or just pushing it away or trying to replace it, you just dismantle it. And I have found,
Mm-hmm.
and especially when I say it, I don't know if Bashar says this or not, but I heard someone else say, like, I say it like either to like in the most loving parenting way, because we don't always talk to our children in a loving way. We're like, shut up, you're fine. Nobody ever died from that. But when we're our best selves, right, we can be more loving and things like that. So that's
Mm-hmm.
another way to sort of play with that preferential and less preferential state without it being even a negative. It's either what
Yeah.
you prefer or what you less than prefer. And if you less than prefer it, maybe there's some belief system there that's keeping that as a persistent state for you that you don't want. So then you can get rid of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so powerful. And it's always interesting in these conversations how it always to me dances on, and I want to bring us here, and then I want to make sure we get back into talking about this in context of fertility and women's health and all of that. But this conversation about mindset and changing the story always dances the edge of that like spiritual bypassing piece. And so I always like to bring it into these conversations just for anybody who might be new to this channel who's not like, yes, Eileen, we know how there are ways to hold the both end of it all. I think Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, he talks about his ability to find meaning and purpose in a concentration camp, and he doesn't bypass that it's really hard, like it was terrible, atrocities were committed there, but the ability to still find a way to move forward with some meaning is why this mindset work is so useful.
Yes, 100%. And to remember that this seems harsh, but it is a choice. That
Mm-hmm.
whatever state we are in all day, every day, it is our choice, even though it absolutely feels that it has been foisted upon us. It is a
Mm-hmm.
choice, but it takes some real slowing down. It doesn't, I don't even want to like put it in that it's hard, but it does take some listening and slowing
Mm-hmm.
down to be able to realize like now for me when I'm in a funk or whatever, like I can name it and I can be like, man, I'm a funk and I'm choosing to be in a funk. I don't know how to get out of it. And I don't even want to get out of it because I'm going to drink some wine now and I'm going to just figure it, whatever.
Yeah.
But that's very different than being like, I'm in a funk and I can't work and I can't figure it out. That to me doesn't feel powerful. At least I can be like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a funk. I'm choosing to be in a funk, and I'm choosing to stay in the funk until I'm not in a funk or until I do something to move out of it. Because then you don't
Mm-hmm.
feel so powerless. And actually, I feel
Yeah.
emboldened because I'm like, yeah, I am
Yeah.
forced, like I am causing myself to suffer today. I'm choosing to suffer. And then it sort
Yeah.
of destigmatizes it for ourselves and being like, because where the choice is what we do with it. And I have a dog who's usually distracting us on every recording, and she's part Malinois. And if you've ever seen a Malinois, they're complete nuts. And usually, when I am not paying attention to her, she can box jump about 8 feet, just like, and so she'll be behind,
Wow.
just, and her ears and lips and everything go up, and then she's floating down. It's very cute, but very distracting. The only reason I bring her in is this dog's default is this is going to be the most amazing thing that ever happened. Like, whatever happens, she's like, oh my God, this is going to be the most amazing. She runs through barbed wire one day, right? She starts bleeding, but she really likes blood. So she starts licking up her blood, and she's so excited. She's like, oh my God, blood is my favorite thing. I'm so excited. I don't know what happened. That stung me, but there's blood everywhere. Then she starts rolling in the grass. Now there's blood and grass, two of her favorite things. Now she's eating the blood grass, and she's so excited. And why I bring that story up is because she doesn't choose it, it's how she's made, but we can choose it. Like, it's like, Joe
Mm-hmm.
Dispenza is like breaking the habit of being yourself. Like, what is the state of beingness that we want to addict ourselves to? So that no matter,
Mm-hmm.
like my dog's, her addicted state is, this is going to be so cool. Like, I want to figure it out. This is going to be an adventure. She
Mm-hmm.
could go both ways. She'd be like, oh, wah, take me to the ER. I need 48 stitches and, drugs. Or she could be like, this is the best day of my life because I get to drink blood and eat grass. And so, but there's so much power in that distinction.
Yeah, yeah. And I think even, if it feels for some listeners, it might be like, oh, I don't know if I want to feel like I've chosen to feel in a funk, but we do get to choose how we perceive that funk once we're there. I think about,
Yeah.
I have two modes. I can go into like, woe is me, pity party. That's my choice. Something shitty happens. Yeah, it's normal to react with grief or upset or hurt, whatever it is, the event that's outside of us that we can't control happens. And some of those things, a really normal, valid response is to feel upset by it. But then we get to choose, okay, do I have a pity party? Do I feel like, what was me? I have no control. Or do I go, okay, this happened. I get to hold it. I get to let that emotion be there. And yeah, I can choose to drink wine because I'm actually want to wallow a little bit. That's cool. Or
Hmm.
I can choose to cry and then move forward and do something that helps me shift my energy. And I think it's just so, so powerful to have that awareness that yes, things will happen outside of us that we do not have control over, but we always have a choice of how it is we respond.
A hundred
Yeah.
percent, 100%. And even like one of my friend's moms died a few days ago, and
Mm.
it was really interesting because she was not able to be there. She lives in Hawaii, and the mom lives here in Texas, and she was like, this is so sad, but at the same time, so many people have sent so many kind words and messages and videos, and she's like, of course I don't want to lose my mom, but equally there has been so much beauty and grace. And she's
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm going to hold on to the grace and the beauty as my life support through the grief,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so even if we still are mired in those feelings, right, we can still also figure out where's the grace around this, and how do
Yeah.
we use the grace as the tool to make sense of the grief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a beautiful example for sure. I feel like this kind of the discussion about those hard feelings and grief and how we sit with these and how we choose to move forward can bring us back really beautifully into the conversation about fertility and the work that you do, because for so many women the fertility journey is one that's filled with anxiety and grief and loss and desire that feels, often like it's out of their control. Do you want to speak to how you support women through those spaces with the work that you do?
Well, we know that from the clinical data that having a diagnosis of infertility is as stressful as a cancer diagnosis. I don't think that people understand that. And that when you get cancer, if you tell your group on Facebook that you have breast cancer, Every person in your community is going to bring you a lasagna. They're going to clean your house. They're going to cut your grass. They're going to do all these things. When you get a diagnosis of infertility, you get a lot of help called if you weren't so fat, or if you didn't, whatever, like if you didn't work so hard, if you weren't so skinny, if you weren't a vegan, if you weren't a carnivore, if if your husband didn't work so much, fill in the blank. If you didn't have a dog, whatever your mom wants you to change, right? All they do is they get this like kind of mean, helpful advice. So it's incredibly lonely. A high percentage of women who go through the fertility journey report having symptoms of PTSD from it. It's very heavy because part of it is our system, right? We have not educated women and people with periods with the resources to actually understand how their body works and what their body needs to be successful in making and delivering healthy babies and healthy humans and healthy moms and nursing. And so, I do a TikTok for girls on periods. And one of the biggest questions that I get is, I want to start using tampons and I have no idea where to put it. Right? They don't know anything. Like in Texas, what we teach for sex ed is abstinence. Like you watch a little Disney cartoon from the 50s and I think there's a tampon in it, and that's it. And they don't know anything, and we're going to change that with Conceivable. So what happens is they say you have unexplained infertility and there's basically nothing to do for that. And so they're just trying and hoping and praying. And then they're like suckered into buying all these stupid fertility trackers and monitors, which I think are the biggest scam, most injurious thing for women's health, because capturing ovulation is not the hard part. Repairing irregular cycle is way more important. And if a woman knows her PGD and her LH and her E2, those numbers don't help her to change the outcome. It just stresses her out, and she takes a screenshot of it and sends it to me. And she's like, Kirsten, what does this mean? And what do I do? And I was like, throw that away. That is not useful. And so the services and offerings that they get are useless and stress producing instead of stress alleviating. If they tell anybody, then they're getting a lot more advice. Their friends are getting pregnant, and it's just really, really hard. And so we do a lot of different things to help women to cope with this. In the Conceivable app, we give them a therapist. So they have an AI version of me as a therapist with cognitive behavioral therapy and compassion therapy. So this is not therapy to deal with like sexual trauma or your family of origin. This is what's happening right now that's freaking you out, so that you're not sitting in flight or fright, pumping out adrenaline and cortisol. The first test is learning how to recognize when you're regulated and dysregulated. And that's sort of one of the first goals of Saren, that's the therapist, is just to start being like, oh, I can tell I'm in flight or fright now, right? I feel different in my body. What I can do, because I'm just driving to a meeting, is I can do 4-7-8 breathing 4 times between now and that meeting, and I can really down regulate it. And I can quickly scan, did that work? Okay, I still have a walk in. I'm going to do one more 4-7-8 breathing, and this time I'm going to really work on the out breath. And then we, use biofeedback tools like HRV, VO2 max, so that it's not only how do you feel, but actually what are the numbers saying? So we're building a feedback loop that's training, kind of like listening to music by ear, right? You're plucking and then you hear it and then you check on the tuner and you pluck and you try, right? And you start, oh, that is what an E sounds like correctly on a classical guitar, whatever instrument you're playing. So the same kind of thing. It's because until she knows that, it's very random. Because look, we ladies, we have one mode that we're allowed to be in, and that's just on cute and smiling. If we're mad, we're a bitch. If we're sad, we're a baby. And so we are professionals at not showing anything. And even I'll talk to women and like, how stressed? And like, not that stressed. And then I see their heart rate variability and it's like 20. And I was like, something's not really matching up. Right. If you're really not that stressed, the HRV is going to be higher. And then you talk a little bit more and then there's tears, right? And they really tell you how they're losing their minds, right? And how stressed and bored and overwhelmed they are. And so really first, just I think step one is meeting them in the moment and without any judgment or anything, just being like, yeah, these are the feelings and these become habitual, the same types of feelings. And if we can learn from those habitual presentations, that's where it makes it a lot easier to start, just like we do at the physical body. What are the underlying issues? So if we keep
Yeah.
reverse engineering every single thing until its most base place, then you get a pretty clear picture. And that base piece is usually really easy to repair compared to something like higher level, like, oh, let's fix low progesterone with a supplement or something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So really taking that kind of holistic whole picture into account as you are supporting women. It's a beautiful way to approach it. It's part of what midwifery was. What I loved about it was that I got to just take the whole woman into account, and her lifestyle and her relationships, and whatever it was that was coming up, because that always impacts us. And you mentioned, like, our systems are, the Canadian medical system is different, but also shares a lot of similarities with the American system, in that we treat the cut up here, but we don't treat like what it is that caused that, the wound. It's always a surface level. Always treat the symptom, never treat the root.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that you're offering a different way to approach it.
Well, I hope to prove that you can completely transform women's health for almost free.
Yeah,
Like that you
yeah.
can
So
give
tell
women
me,
the very best of everything for almost free.
yeah. So tell us a little bit more about this app and how people get connected with it.
So it's not out yet, but it will be by the time this airs, I think, based on what we talked about. It's called Conceivable. It's not the first version, what will be out in a few weeks, the first version will be for getting pregnant. Quickly staying pregnant, pregnancy, and postpartum will roll out right after that. And then ultimately, we're building the first operating system for women's health with this premise that we're talking about, starting with age 7, so well before girls have their first period, so that I want to be in charge, right? I don't want any more girls asking me, I want to use a tampon, I don't know where to put it. So
Yeah.
we'll flood them with body positivity, with period positivity, with sex positivity, with everything that we wish that all young women and people with periods knew before they even had their first period. We'll give them resources to
Yeah.
get menstrual supplies, because so many girls tell me my family doesn't have enough money to buy menstrual supplies. So I use old socks from the dirty clothes or the Goodwill or the lost and found in PE. It's horrifying. And so we want to really take
Oh.
care of those girls. But essentially what it is, it's an AI version of me trained on over 10,000 hours of consultations, and then a virtual care team. So what happens in the app is, answer a bunch of questions, basically like the survey. Kai, that's the AI version of me, Kirsten AI. She figures out all the underlying issues that are impacting your ability to get and stay pregnant. And then she tells you about it. Oh, here's some of the things. You only have 1 day of bleeding. Why that's a problem. It's not a cause of infertility, but 1 day of bleeding tells me that there's not much lining to support implantation. And
Mm-hmm.
what's more important is, why isn't there enough lining? Is that what you're
Mm-hmm.
eating? Are you a vegan? Are you a vegetarian? Do you need support there to enrich that diet? Do you just have a really bad diet? Maybe your diet is perfect, but you've got a gut issue. You have a chef who
Mm-hmm.
cooks all of your food from the farmer's market every day, but you got gas, bloating, fatigue after meal, sugar cravings. Well, that's why you're tired. Or maybe it's because you have a lot of anxiety and you're just blowing through resources, being anxious all day. That's the intervention for that. And so
Mm-hmm.
Kai identifies those problems. What are the underlying and the underlying and the underlying? And then the care team, you have a chef, nutritionist, therapist, data analyst, so that instead of saying your PGD is 14, she says, okay, let's look at the whole picture. Your energy is a 2 out of 10. That's why your temperatures are low after ovulation. That's also why you only have 1 day of bleeding. The also thing is that we need to improve what you're eating and how you digest it, so that we can make better energy and better blood to improve the lining. That's the kind of analysis that I think that women deserve. The whole picture, not
Mm-hmm.
only the assessment, but these are the steps that you can do to repair it yourself. And then we give them all the tools to do that. And what's really cool is this AI care team will be your age. So if your 7-year-old daughter starts using Conceivable when the kiddies is what I call them, KITTYS, then Kai and the team will all be 7 years old. And when she's 16, getting her driver's license, we'll be 16 with her. And when she's 25 and when she's 90. So we'll age across that. So you get this feeling that's like, oh, and they'll know everything about
Mm-hmm.
you from whenever you start until whenever you finish. So, you get appendectomy and you're like, oh my God, like, what am I? You tell Kai, like, I have to have my appendix out. Kai goes back through your whole history and is like, oh, tell the doctor this, this, and this, because there's some other things that the doctor might want to know that could be relevant, or, whatever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It sounds incredible. I'm curious, for anyone listening who might be wondering about the security side of things when we think about an app that we're pouring so much of our personal health data into.
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit to the security?
So, as someone who has two chronic illnesses, and because of what's happening in the current political situation, privacy is more important than anything. It is the single most important thing that we talk about. In fact, we have a full-time compliance officer who is reviewing everything that we're doing every single week to make sure that we are HIPAA compliant, SOC 2 compliant, and unhackable. So, we'll ultimately build our own language model, but we need about $5 million to do that.
Right.
Once we build our own language model, we will have it really it won't be possible to have somebody hack it or leak it. So, but the only chance that we would ever sell our users' data is something we've been throwing around is potentially profit sharing. So that I think that women should own their data. And that data can be beneficial in a research capacity and even in some drug cases. Like, I prefer not to use pharmaceuticals, but I take thyroid medication every day and I'm really happy that I can,
For sure.
And so thinking about ideas of saying, like, when people sign up for the app, to say that we will get approached to have access to our databases and our data. We will be publishing stuff, not user individual stuff, but if we have an offer to do that, you can opt in to allow access to your anonymized, meaning anonymous data. It won't be attached to anything to you, but that your data would be included in that data set. And we're going to rev share back with you. If we make $10 off of it, maybe we give you $2 of the dollars out of it. I don't know. It's not going to make anybody $1 million, but at least it's just showing that we do think your data has value and we're shepherding your data and organizing it. We're happy to rev share with you on that if that's an option that you want to do or have access to. I mean, ultimately, I really want Conceivable to be owned by our users as well. Like one round of fundraising, and then the rest will be owned by our users.
Beautiful. Oh, I love that. I love everything you're sharing here. It seems like filling such a need, especially I know the situation in Texas and across the states is more dire, I think, in women's health than in Canada. However, again, we are going that way. And I know a lot of my listeners and especially watchers on YouTube are in the States. So this is really, really relevant material for them.
It's really important, especially if you use Flow. I mean, I just think they just got a $62 million fine for a data leak, but they have a $1 billion valuation, and $62 million isn't a lot. Like the consequence isn't enough compared to the money that they're only making money off your data. And so I don't mean to disparage them, but just be careful. At least work with people who are at least, like Clue at least says they're very vigilant about, your data privacy. And they have not had any huge leaks. So I think that they're doing a good job over there.
They're Canadian.
Go Canada.
So
if it wasn't so cold, I would immigrate to Canada. I just wouldn't make it a day. Maybe Vancouver.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's snowing here today, so.
Oh, good Lord. It's
but it's snowing across most of the northern states as well. I think I was on a call with a bunch of folks out from New York State, and they were all getting snow today too, I think. So it's
crazy.
Yeah, it is what it is. But yes, Texas weather is much, much warmer than here. Is there anything else you'd like to leave listeners with, to share about any of our conversation, whether it's the app itself or just about the mindset work, that side of our conversation? Anything that you want to add?
Just since you're a former midwife, I had both of my kids at home with the same midwife, Lori Fremgen. I love you so much, Lori. 20 years ago. But she told me something that I have repeated a million times probably, but it was one of the most powerful things. So I just would love to share it with your audience. She said, just trying to cue it up, right? She said, I'm trying to think what I said that made her say this now. I'm trying to think about it. She says, look, every woman in labor starts saying, I'm dying. She goes, they get to transition. They're like, I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dying. And she said, and the truth is, she is. She said, what happens at transition is you go from being someone, even though you might be married, who is still completely free, to once your baby is born, there is a soul contract formed that is it's indelible, it's unbreakable. And when your baby is delivered, you are now the mother of
Mhm.
forever, you know?
Mhm.
And she said, so you are completely different. Who you are before you push out that baby until who you are after you push out that baby is completely different.
Mhm.
And I said, oh, well, like, what do you do? You know, how do you handle this? And she said, well, you have to, the only way to get a baby out is to surrender.
Mhm.
And and I was like, and I'm kind of a control freak. And I was like, uh-oh. And she goes, yeah, I know, that's what I was thinking. This is after 5 minutes of talking to this lady, right? I was like, do you think I'm a control freak? And she was like, well, I think that if you could control the weather, you'd at least make a good effort at it. And I said, well, what am I going to do? And she said, well, you're a producer, right? I mean, you can get stuff done in the world. And I said, yeah. She's like, okay. She goes, you're going to use that same competitive, goal oriented type to become a black belt at surrender. And she says, your
Mm.
mother-in-law calls you and tells you to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and bring the kids for brunch. You're like, I would love to. I'll be there. Somebody tries to jam in front of you in traffic and you're late for a meeting. You're like, after you, I've got nowhere to go. You practice surrender, surrender. And she goes, and when you get to transition, you tell me, Lori, I'm dying. Lori, I'm dying. I'm going to look you right in the eye and I'm going to say, you are. Are you ready to let go? And she
Mm.
says, and what I would like to invite you to think about doing is in that moment, you take one deep breath and you surrender it all. See, still crying. And,
Hmm.
and she says, and when you can do that, you will pass through transition if the baby's in the right position pretty straightforwardly. She goes, but if you can't, you will stay there until you are ready. And she's like, so
Mhm.
practice now. And when the time comes, this is what we'll do. And then that was exactly how it happened. You know, it was just like, I took that on as a real challenge. Like, I don't surrender to anybody. That's how I used to be, And I was like, I can surrender to everything. Like, no one can out surrender me. But then when the time came, you're just like, whew. So,
Yeah.
nice, efficient labors and, a few problems, but all of
Yeah.
them do a little bit. So I just invite everybody to just think about that and just remember that it's the birth of your own child is your own rebirth. I mean, you probably say all
Mhm.
this kind of stuff anyways too, but and that's such a beautiful thing. And the other thing that she said was, she's like, she did such a great job, and so many midwives that I've seen in action are so good at this. But I would be complaining like, oh, it hurts, but every single step she was, and this comes back to the woo, she would reframe it. Like, wow,
Mhm.
your body is so powerful, showing me my contractions. Look at your power.
Mhm.
So instead of it being a traumatizing experience, you come out feeling like a superhero that you are because you just made a human, which is so superhuman. So
Yeah.
go midwives. I love you guys.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's a powerful space to have walked within. I find birth metaphors come up over and over and over, and they're so relevant, whether or not we've ever given birth. I think they provide potent insight into what transformation in our lives in general. Yeah, that's a lovely share. Thank you for bringing it here to listeners. And for everybody who is wanting to find out more, they can find you at conceivable.com. Are you on Instagram as well? I think you are. I've got that up ahead. All the links are going to be below in the show notes.
Yes, Conceivable Official, but
Yeah.
you're better off on TikTok because that's really all
Okay.
my Instagram is mostly like repurposed TikTok. So
Fair. Fair. All right. Well, if you're on TikTok, go find her at Your Fertility Expert. And then if you're finding the repurposed on Instagram, it's conceivable.official. And thank you so much again for being my guest today. It was a pleasure to speak with you.
oh, thank you.
You're welcome. And for all of you listening, Woo Crew, as always, the links will be below in the show notes. Go check out conceivable.com and Kirsten's work. It's really important. I will be back here same time with you next week. If you like this episode, rate, review, like, subscribe, all the things depending on the platform you're on, and make sure you tell a friend. Bye for now.